who are your MVP candidates in the NFL for a season that starts 9 weeks from this very day, Bill Barnwell?
Okay. So, I mean, we can start with the obvious one, right?
Okay.
Patrick Mahomes, always going to be the favorite, just because, of course, the numbers are going to be there. And the thing that comes to mind here, the thing that comes up with a bunch of these guys I'm going to mention here, is that we're moving to a 17-game season. And so suddenly, all these records that might have been in play in a typical year are really in play now because we're looking at that extra game. Suddenly, we might have the first 2,000-yard receiver in NFL history in 2021. We have a better chance of that happening than we had in prior years. We might have Patrick Mahomes set the passing record. We might have a running back like Derrick Henry set the rushing record. So I think if you're a record setter, if you're a record setter at one of those spots, I think that gives you an edge, an opportunity to be an MVP candidate. Maybe in a typical year that might be harder. So Mahomes is the favorite, but then you go down the list, someone like a Derrick Henry. Last year, 2,000 yards, didn't really sniff MVP candidacy, but if he could top Eric Dickerson's record, and he has a better shot this year than he had maybe in years past, I think the field opens up a bit. Or if someone, let's say someone gets to 25 sacks. Let's say, someone like a TJ Watt or a Zadarius Smith has that great season, gets that extra game, and not only sets the sack record, but blows away the sack record. To me, I think that 17th game really opens up the field for possible MVP picks in the NFL this year.
Okay, and now who's 1A for you then, if it is not Mahomes? Because the way it works.
1A.
The way it works, Bill, is that after a while, NFL media that votes on this sort of thing, I still don't get a vote on this sort of thing because I'm an NFL employee. The Associated Press thinks that I'm biased, or that like Roger Goodell is going to whisper in my ear the one time I am actually in his presence in a calendar year that how to vote, even though he's never told me a damn thing to say in my career. I'm now off my soapbox. But the way that this thing works, Bill, is that people get bored. Like, all right, we've already done that. Like, we don't have to do it again. So give me a 1A, 1B, 1C here for you in that regard.
1A, 1B, 1C.
Right.
I will go with. Let me give you 3 tiers of guys. Let me give you a favorite with Mahomes. I think right up there. Boring pick, but Tom Brady. I mean, a guy who's still playing at a high level. We saw what Peyton Manning a few years ago in Denver. His first season, very good. Some ups and downs, but by the end of the year was kind of clicking on all cylinders. The playoffs were a bit of a mess, unlike Brady. But year 2, that was one of the best seasons of Peyton's career. Even at the end of his career, won an MVP. I think Tom Brady could have that kind of season in Tampa now that he's more comfortable in the offense. Everybody's coming back from last year's team. You get Antonio Brown for a full season, he could suddenly be. I think a guy who, even though we know he's a traditional favorite, could get that one last MVP opportunity this year. Second tier, I'm going to go with the guy you were playing us in with, Kyler Murray. I mean, a guy who was a hot candidate last year.
He was.
And after that Bills game, after that Hail Mary, I think everybody was talking about Kyler Murray as an MVP candidate, but then second half of the year, some injuries, Cardinals kind of broke down. His candidacy sort of fell apart, but we know he has that upside. For me, it's just, can he put that together for 17 games? Can he stay healthy? Can the players around him stay healthy? And can the Cardinals win the NFC West? Because usually, realistically, you have to win the division for you to win MVP. And then I think the long shot, and I don't know what you guys think about this. Let me know how you feel. But Jameis Winston, a guy who we know, I mean, obviously, he has some problems. We know that he is a guy who can turn the ball over 5 or 6 times in a game if you give him the opportunity. But, man, I love the weapons around him with Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. It's a dominant offensive line when those guys are healthy up front. It's the one thing the Saints really did not get rid of this year is they really kept that core of the offensive line together. And then Sean Payton, I mean, a guy who is maybe one of the 2 or 3 best minds in all of football in creating an offense. I have to think Jameis Winston, assuming he starts, which, again, is not a guarantee, I have to assume Jameis Winston is going to look a lot different from the guy we saw in Tampa. And if that's the case, and they can win the NFC South, I think he could post some incredible numbers, and that could be a guy who nobody's thinking about right now. But for me, kind of a long shot MVP candidate there.
Bill Barnwell here on the Rich Eisen Show. If Jameis Winston wins the MVP of the NFL in 2021, if he is that guy, that would mean the Saints would have to probably get a 12, 13, maybe 14-win season in a 17-game schedule. And then I guess Brockman, we'd have to take bets on which member of the NFL media would be first to call Drew Brees a system quarterback. You know, like
I gotta guess.
You know, I mean, that would be wild, Bill. That would be totally wild. But I understand how prolific he was in Tampa. You know, and all the interceptions. You would assume he would cut those down. And earlier on in the in the show here before you joined, I had 5 shrug emoji teams for the NFL season where, you know, you just don't know. They could be playoff worthy and go on a playoff run or wind up choosing in the top half of the draft in Vegas next year. And I was thinking of putting the Saints as one of those teams, but because you just don't know at that quarterback spot. But I just think that offensively and defensively, they are so rock solid, terrific that Winston may just be plugged into that and have the best year of his career. You know, I really think so.
I mean, look at what Sean Payton's done over the past couple of years with Drew Brees hurt. I mean, it's been Teddy Bridgewater looking really impressive with that Saints team. It's been Taysom Hill, you know, not being Drew Brees by any means, but they're winning games with Taysom Hill at quarterback. To me, I think if you give Sean Payton an average quarterback, or maybe even a little worse than average quarterback, and a competent defense, I was going to say he's going to win you 10 games in a 16-game season. I don't know what that means anymore, but he can win you 11 games in a 17-game season, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to be a winning coach. And I think that the Saints did lose some talent this offseason. I think you have to be realistic about that. But the core of this team, outside of the quarterback situation, is still there. And I think that, you know, you look at what he's done over the past couple of years, he's won games even without Drew Brees. So, you know, I think they don't really have that floor to me. They don't have that floor of, we're going to be a top 10 team picking in this year's draft. I could see them being, you know, 9-8, 8-9, maybe having an up-and-down season with Jameis or Taysom Hill at quarterback, but I can't imagine them going like 5-12 or 6-11. They just don't. You know, to me, I think Sean Payton's such a good coach that he sort of locks you in for 7 wins to even begin with.
Bill Barnwell here on the Rich Eisen Show, senior NFL writer for ESPN. 9 weeks until the season kicks off, just on this very day for the NFL 2021 campaign. There's one name that I don't believe we've talked about yet, or we haven't mentioned in the MVP possibility, and that's, I think, the hottest candidate that a lot of people are jumping on right now, and that's Matthew Stafford of the Rams and the situation that he's been put into. The podcast that my colleague at the NFL Media Group, Peter Schrager, does with Rams coach Sean McVay for Simmons Ringer, had Kyle Shanahan on this week, and it was quite a conversation that they had where Shanahan was grinding tape on Stafford, and he found out that Stafford went to the Rams, and he kind of, you know, I think he cleaned it up for the podcast. I think it caused him to work a little blue wherever he was in the room when he learned about it, because he's so into Stafford. So what do you think of all that, Bill?
I'm intrigued. And I'll tell you what, the thing I worry about with the Rams is not really Matthew Stafford's ability. I really believe that he is an upper echelon quarterback with the right pieces around him. And we think with the Rams, that receiver, hey, you can't argue, right? I mean, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee, Cam Akers, you figure playing a bigger role in the backfield. There's a lot of talent around Matthew Stafford, but same issue he had with the Lions is that are people going to be able to protect him? I mean, that Rams offensive line, not very good the past couple of years. They're relying heavily on Andrew Whitworth, who to me is one of the most underrated players in the NFL over the past 20 years, a guy who's, you know, been an upper echelon left tackle approaching 40. I mean, you know, it's not Tom Brady, but it's pretty close in terms of, you know, you're counting on this guy to be the guy he was years before, and maybe he will be, and that's great if he is, but if he's not, there's no plan B for the Rams. That offensive line, to me, is a problem. And you think about the defense, well, Brandon Staley left. He was an excellent defensive coordinator, turned around that team. They did lose a bunch of pieces in the secondary. Jalen Ramsey's still there, but a couple new starters there in the secondary. And this is a team that does not have a lot of cap space, a lot of draft capital to work with. So they haven't been able to do very much in terms of adding talent to this roster. So to me, you know, when I think about what an MVP has to do, number one, put up great numbers. I think Matthew Stafford can do that. Number two, stay healthy. Matthew Stafford has had some injury issues the past couple of years. A tough guy. I mean, no one's arguing his toughness, but just at some point, you get hit a lot, you're going to get injured. And number three, when it comes to winning the division, I kind of think the Rams are in the same spot they were a year ago. Granted, they did put up impressive season. But I can see the offense improving a little bit with Matthew Stafford at quarterback, but the defense simultaneously taking a step backwards. So to me, I think Matthew Stafford's a viable pick. I could see him getting better, putting up big numbers, but there are other guys I like a little more than Matthew Stafford when it comes to that sort of, those hot candidates. Like someone like a Baker Mayfield, I like more maybe than a Matthew Stafford.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.